Hello and welcome to Patron Saints of Pop Culture Podcast. As always, I am your co-saint, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about Cargo.
If you've not heard about Cargo is a now Netflix original movie. It was originally an independent Australian short film. Mm-hmm. Was turned into a feature-length, full-length film with Martin Freeman. It's available on Netflix now. You can watch it there. Fantastic movie, especially if you like zombie movies. But we'll get into the review and summary here just now.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good to me.
My summary of it is not your typical zombie movie with a father who does whatever it takes to take care of his family during the post-apocalyptic zombie near future.
Sure. Yeah, I would say that. Let's see. My summary. Father is on a journey to protect his daughter and comes up with a lot of hard decisions. And everything works out in the end.
Sort of.
In a way. Yeah. His goal has been achieved. Right? He set a goal.
Okay.
And he achieved it.
Yeah. In a way. Yeah. I thought it was an excellent film. I ended up crying throughout most of it, only because I kept putting myself in the place of the protagonist, and since that's pretty much what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about fatherhood here in just a second. And since it is Father's Day, if you're listening to our podcast before you do anything else this Father's Day,
which is hard to do since Father's Day is almost over.
Yeah, the Pacific Coast still has a few hours,
okay.
So then you can go watch this movie for Father's Day, and then get really sad and want to call your dad, and or not call your dad. So
yes,
that's my review. Is that it's a really good movie that'll probably make you cry.
Yeah,
It'll get a blessing.
I typically don't cry during a lot of movies, except for Pixar movies. But I bawled several times. And there were a couple of times where I was very, shocked about what I was seeing. I should say you probably shouldn't watch it if you struggle with potential violence towards children. Because there's just one scene at the very end, if you haven't already watched it, that might be a little bit shocking because probably most network television and most American movie censors would have probably axed that scene.
Yeah.
I mean, I should say the baby's fine, but it's cutting it kind of close. So a lot of people may find that a little bit disturbing. So just as a warning for that. But I did enjoy it. I did not feel like it was a zombie movie as I was watching it, if that makes sense. It was still a horror movie, but it wasn't a horror movie because there was a lot more heart and a lot more character building than typical horror movies go. Well, it was more or suspenseful movie, I guess.
No, it's horror movie. It would still be in the genre of horror movie. It's more
akin to a drama, maybe?
Well, character-driven horror movie rather than a gore fest kind of thing.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not gory. You're not going to be seeing tons of blood and guts. So.
Well, you barely even see the zombies. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, you see some guts, but it's not
Well, I mean, and if you're like me, who has consumed a probably a metric ton of zombie pop culture, whether it be books or movies or TV shows or basically anything with a zombie in it, chances are I've either seen it or read it or heard of it. So it's a lot of the implied horror.
Yeah.
The anxiety of implied horror.
Yep. Yeah, so I know that's a little bit more in depth than we normally go, but I thought it was worth saying.
All right. I want to talk about the main character, Andy, here in the movie. That I think that he really embodies what I feel to be what is sorely lacking in pop culture today. And I wrote about this a few months ago. In fact, I wrote about it around the holiday time. It was about fathers and about fatherhood and how I was always a big fan of Joseph in the whole Christmas narrative of the story, and is that, there's not very much said about him, and that, I really wanted to know more about him. I really wanted to know more about this carpenter and who decides to marry this woman, and even though she's pregnant by God, according to the story, that he still marries her, even though I'm pretty sure that's not how it happened. It's I never really understood really kind of what it was to be a father until my son was born. Like, there was that moment when my son was born I was sobbing so hard that it hurt my ribs.
Yep, he had to sit down.
I did have to sit down. And I was, your priorities really just kind of shift in that moment where you've gone from your entire life of just kind of being, this, well, either, solo person, or if you're married, just being an us, to now a larger us. And this little tiny human being just kind of like really kind of shatters your world. And it's more or less becoming somebody that you want that little person to see you as. Mm-hmm. And for me, these last 2.5 years,
almost 2.5,
yeah, of being a dad, it's really been very eye-opening. Is that it's a lot less me and a lot more making sure that everything is taken care of for my son, and making sure that I do what I can to take care of him. And this, I think, is embodied throughout the entire film of what Andy's doing here, is that Andy is putting Rosie first, and mm-hmm. Even trying to be a good husband in that as well with Kay, and at the very beginning of the movie when he's going off the boat to the crashed yacht to get food and supplies, and that was her main anxiety was to take care of that. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to take care of that. And mm-hmm. Oh, look, a bottle of wine, great anniversary present.
Yep.
And doing what he can to really just to take care of her anxieties, but also make sure that he takes care of Rosie at the same time. And you see it kind of shift, throughout the entire movie, especially when, here's a big spoiler alert. We didn't give any spoiler alerts at the beginning, but
I feel like we don't need to do that at this point.
Yeah. When he gets bit, when he begins to turn, is that his main priority then is shifted to making sure that Rosie has every chance to succeed in life before he exits that 48 hours later. Mm-hmm. He comes across Toomey, and he's in essence, he finds out about Toomey and that her father has died, and so he ends up in just those few hours that he has left with Toomey is being Toomey's surrogate father in those last moments. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a beautiful impression of not just what it means to be a father, but what it means to be a man. And I think this is something that is completely lost in our pop culture, because in our pop culture we have all of these major pictures of fathers that are just horribly lacking in intelligence, in emotional intelligence, in social intelligence, and just all kinds of stuff. I mean, our major roles as fathers, and I mean, I can almost guarantee that if I asked our audience, who's the first character that comes to mind when you say father, it's probably going to be like Homer Simpson or Peter Griffin or Red.
Yeah.
What is their last name in that
Foreman.
sentence? Foreman.
Yeah, you say that, and honestly, like right now, I'm thinking, I'm like, I can't think of a really honest, good father figure. Well, I guess This Is Us might have one, but This Is Us limits
Randall, but and Jack,
but that also limits a very short, like group of people. I mean, people who watch This Is Us already have emotional intelligence.
Yeah. But Jack is also sorely lacking in his emotional intelligence because he's kind of shut off. He's shut off his past from his present, which I guess in some ways is good. But we're not talking about This Is Us.
No, that's just an example.
Yeah, and I really think this is something that, and I did listen to a podcast from Hidden Brain, and I really recommend almost all fathers and all middle-aged men to listen to this podcast. And this is it was a podcast about the Lonely American Male is I think the title of that podcast episode, and it really goes into depth about how middle-aged American men have grown up with this idea of toxic masculinity that has taught them that it's not okay to share their feelings, it's not okay to be in touch with their feelings, it's not okay to have any emotional intelligence. And here you have this father in this pop culture movie in Cargo here that is kind of the embodiment of that.
Yeah.
He's in touch with his emotions. I mean, you saw that raw emotion when when Kay died, when he had to kill her, and like just yelling out. And you saw that Martin Freeman does a fantastic job, by the way. Yeah. You saw the raw emotions every single time he had like the seizures or anything that showed that he was, turning.
Also, you could
in his
see
final moments too, like that whole thing.
Well, when he's taken across the, I guess, work site with Vic.
Yeah.
Like you could see his like, I gotta get out of here. Like this guy's crazy. Like you could clearly see that. Also, another part that touched me was when he almost took that other father's advice with the 2 bullets. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that too. The comparison between the two.
A little bit, and I think right there you see kind of that juxtaposition of the American masculinity type with this other father figure type that I'm talking about. Is that you have this father who thinks it's best just since he was bit that he, instead of leaving his family, he's just going to take all of his family with him.
Yeah, because he promised he'd take care of them.
Yeah.
Which I'm just like, well, I don't know why killing them means you're taking care of them, but
yeah. And I mean, there is a lot of that sentimentality, especially in today's world, because of it's people thinking this is a horrible world. Why would you want to bring kids into this world? And now as a father, it's really, this is one of the things that drives me in a lot of my political views now, is that what if it were me? And I think we talked about this like in a previous podcast about refugees. Was those pictures of the refugees, of the Syrian refugees coming across the Mediterranean, and now these stories of the refugees that are at our own border that are being separated from their families. Like, I can imagine like here in this situation that Andy would be like just distraught and would probably like fight and try to kill the border patrol agents that are doing this.
Oh yeah.
And of course that's going to get him to more trouble and probably get him taken out. And so, I mean, this is stuff that I can completely see myself doing. And like, I feel for these parents, these families that are being torn apart at our own border. And I think this is very much the lost art of being a man here in this culture, is that we say that being a man is being tough and being strong and being rigid and being this legalitarian person that only cares about the letter of the law and blah, blah, blah. But no, the lost art of being a man is being in touch with who you are, with being in touch with your feelings and your emotions, and understanding that you're a human being and that gender has nothing to do with it, that you're a human being first, and that, human beings have emotions and human beings have these priorities, and, to hell with stereotypes.
Yep. That was a good one, honey.
Okay.
I want to talk about a little bit. I find that this was also a major theme throughout it as well, is getting back to your roots. And you kind of already said a little bit of it, going back to what it really means to being a human, essentially. But I want to also talk about the Aboriginal people. When Andy first finds out that when he first meets the teacher and the teacher shows him, this used to be my class, and he's like, oh no, you lost them all? Like, they're all gone? And she's like, oh no, they're fine. Like it's okay. Like, they're not dead. Like, they're just not here. Like, they've just decided that they've gotten together with their community and decided just to turn back to how things used to be, and they're doing just fine. And I think that sometimes in some circumstances, we kind of need to pull away from our own society, especially the parts that aren't so good for us, and to kind of go back to our roots in order to kind of find ourselves again. As you can see with the Aboriginal people, one of the reasons why they ended up doing so well, I think, this is my opinion, I'm not sure if it's officially confirmed yet in Cargo, but part of the reason why is because they have focused on community. Like, they gathered up, they put the people who, can protect the village, out on the forefront, killing any zombies that they come across, which, of course, is also a service to other people in the area.
Yeah.
So they're not just helping themselves, they're also helping everybody else in the community. Also, too, they have put the people who can't fight in a place that is safer. Probably, well, if you kind of look, when you see the aerial view of where they were walking into, it was almost like they were kind of on a
plateau that was also a crater?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. But anyway, so it was clearly, though, it was at least somewhat safe. Somewhat kind of barrier between them and the danger on the other side. And I feel like this focus on community is definitely not something that we see in America very often. We're very, very much pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, be an individual, focus on yourself, which I think is part of what's leading to our loneliness that you were talking about.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think that's part of the whole thing, was that toxic masculinity is that it's also a part of our toxic society of basing ourselves on the individual rather than on the community.
Yeah.
What was it? Something else that I was... Oh, it was a game that I was playing. I was playing Mass Effect Andromeda, and I don't know if you've ever played the Mass Effect games or not, but it's more or less diplomacy in space. And so this is a completely different galaxy, and you're meeting these brand new aliens, and he was talking about, I hope you don't judge me because of what my people are doing. And the humans and everybody from the Milky Way galaxy was kind of being just, pirates and stuff like that, and just taking what they could. And so that's why he was saying that. And so the alien says to him, no, I don't judge communities, I judge the individual. Which I think is what our society was meant to be doing, was to judge the individual and not the community as a whole. But it kind of got it twisted in a way, so.
Yeah, you're right. In fact, that's why, if you ever talk to a racist, they're going to group everybody together.
Yeah.
You might get the one that's like, oh, but, but my neighbor, he's okay. He's a good one. Which is just BS. But anyway, I'm not saying that your neighbor isn't a good person. I'm just saying your reasoning is BS. Yeah. But anyway. And I think I think that we also have to remember that us as people, like the only reason why we have exploded across this planet, have expanded our knowledge so much, have expanded our technology and our civilizations is because of community. Like, we went from, when we got to the point of, well, even when we were in hunter-gathering situations, we were still in a community. Like, it was just a smaller community, but we were still in like small clustered communities that just happened to travel. So we've always been a part of some kind of community, even way back when. Has always been a part of us. So I don't know why all of a sudden, like in the past couple hundred years, just individualism has been this, like, I don't know, kind of like a moment of pride.
Well, and I think this is also, I'm going to be jumping on podcasts again here, but this was another podcast from Hidden Brain. It was kindergartening. Is the name of that podcast episode, and this one was talking about parenting between the carpenter model and the gardening model. Was that carpentry? You know, you try to you plan out everything, and you kind of do your cuts, you know, the way that you planned it, and everything else like this.
You mean like planning your daycare? And then the preschool, and then the elementary school before you're even pregnant? Well,
that, but also more or less just like trying to control all the variables of your child's life. Where in gardening, you can't control all the variables. The plant's going to do what the plant's going to do, and the weather's going to do what the weather's going to do, and it's really not up to you. You just kind of give it what it needs and hope it comes out well. And this is part of the thing, was that parenting was never like an industry until it became one in this country, in the United States, because everybody wanted to do, how do you raise your kid well? And the thing was, this wasn't something that concerned human beings for a long time.
Yeah.
Was a lot of the parenting method was, let them be raised by the community that we're in. There were different communities that, the whole village was their family, was their parent. And, it doesn't matter who they were with, that person was going to parent them.
Yep. And
I think this is something that I'll have to look into if the Aboriginal tribes do that. But this is kind of the way that it looked. Where at the very end there was when they came in with this new child, that everybody was kind of like, oh, look, it's a new baby, hey, new baby, welcome to this community. And
they're going to make me cry. That scene was a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to bring up the loneliness aspect of it as well, too. I think part of the reason why men are so lonely, especially, as you said, middle-aged men, and also the elderly, too. There's a big problem of the elderly being lonely as well, too. And it causes like widespread depression as well throughout that community as well. When we don't have the community, it leads to the loneliness.
Yeah.
So even though we have been told over and over again, you need to be an individual, you need to take care of yourself, you need to just focus on yourself and nobody else, not only do you end up leaving other people behind, instead of helping the community and bettering the community as a whole, you're just trying to focus on yourself. But then also by focusing on yourself, you're actually doing more damage to yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like a double whammy in that regards. Because something that you could have done to help out the community, you end up not doing because you're seeking to only satisfy your own needs and not anybody else's.
Well, I think this is something that Andy went from doing to where he was at the end, was that Andy's character progression at the very beginning was he was going to do what he was going to do. Mm-hmm. And his family was the only one that really mattered, even though he did have a couple of those saving the cat moments at the very beginning, which, by the way, filmmakers, look, it was 5 seconds. Like, he just waved at kids, and that was a saving the cat moment. That made you feel for that character. You're like, oh, look, he's waving at kids. He must be a nice guy. He got an anniversary gift for his wife. He shouldn't have, he thought of her, and it was like, oh, that's nice. It's a saving the cat moment.
Yeah.
But he was really focused on that. And even when Etta tells him about the tribe, and especially about Toomey and Toomey's family, He decides not to go with that. He decides, okay, I'm going to do what I was going to be doing originally, which is going to the military base.
And what happens? He ends up with that family anyway.
I know, exactly. It's like, you could have just saved some time, Andy.
I know. He could have gone there a lot sooner. He probably would have been able to relax a little bit before he passed away.
I don't know. Vic may have still found them. And
I don't know.
Yeah.
Gosh, Vic. Anyway, I thought about talking about Vic this episode, but I didn't want to get too angry. Yeah. So I decided not to. But what was I going to say again? Now I've just completely lost my spot.
Loneliness, sorry.
Yes, loneliness. Oh, here's the funny thing. So I'm not sure. I know that there's been a couple of podcasts about this, like Stuff Mom Never Told You talked about this. And I think there was a couple other articles out there about how one of the common denominators, I think Samantha Bee also did a video on this too. But one of the common denominators with a lot of mass shooters is the fact that they're lonely. Like they tend to be hermits. They tend to, if they do have friends, they tend not to have a close friend. They tend to, have more of acquaintances. Typically they don't have any close family. And that all points to being lonely. And a lot of those individuals, I almost want to say it's not completely their fault because they were told they have to be an individual. They were told in order to be successful, they have to look out for themselves. Well,
and this is toxic masculinity, toxic values of society that are very inherent in even the American way. This is kind of like the American way is pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and the land of opportunity. And well, the thing is, the opportunities have dwindled. It's no longer the land of opportunity. It's not the same. Mm-mm. It's not the same as it was for even our parents' generation or the generation before that.
No,
our parents' generation, the boomers, had a lot of opportunities. They could work a minimum wage job and still afford to buy a house.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
No, not at all. And the funny thing is, too, like, even though we have pushed this idea on individualism on so many people, one of the things that, if you look at the writings of some of the mass shooters, one of the common themes, too, is the fact that they complain that they're lonely. They complain that they don't have companionship. But they have also not been given the tools to seek out a healthy relationship, a healthy companionship, whether that be with a best friend or with a family member or with a partner. They just don't have the tools, and we don't provide our community or our individuals with the tools to have friendships.
Well, I think it's something else is, I'm going to go back to another Hidden Brain podcast, is the scarcity effect is that especially, and this is something that he talks about in that loneliness episode a little bit too, but in the scarcity effect episode was talking about how our brains, when we don't have something, is we'll try to do whatever we can to do that and to hold on to it, and we end up losing it because we do whatever we can to try to hold on to what we have. And so this is something that happens, I think, in that instance, is that lonely people are tough to be around because they're in that scarcity effect, that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And that they're going to say some really stupid stuff because they're wanting to be liked so badly.
Uh-huh.
And I know this, I do this. I word vomit with almost every new person that I meet because I don't know what's socially acceptable anymore. I only talk to my son and I only talk to my wife, and I have a podcast. So I have no social skills whatsoever.
You talk to Luke.
I talk to the dog, too.
Don't forget about him. He's part of the family, too, Miguel.
And I think this is something that those tools is part of whole as a life skills kind of thing that we need to teach our children is how to think in the long term, even though you're in a pit, even though you're in, that part where you can't really get out of.
Yeah.
Is that, you need to think beyond the right now. And I know the right now is going to suck and it does, but how to think beyond the scarcity effect.
Yeah, I think part of the scarcity effect too, something that also comes to my mind, I'm sure everybody has come across this one individual in their life, but when you come across a particularly lonely person and you're nice with, you're nice to them like you should be, and, try to build a friendship with them, and then all of a sudden they're like,
well,
they're right there, and they're just like,
yeah, they make it more than it really should be.
Yeah.
And it's part of the scarcity effect. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what it reminds me of. Because there's been several people. If you work with me, you probably know of an individual who this happened to me with. I know that's very vague, but it's true. This person, I felt bad for them, and we had a few things in common, and I was like, okay, maybe we can build a relation, like a friendship out of that. And then all of a sudden, you're right. Like, it was just like word vomit. I just knew way too much about her and that I didn't necessarily need to know. It's like she came on too strong, too fast,
Yeah.
And, go ahead.
I mean, that's the scarcity effect in that. And I think that you can see this a bit in, it's personified in Vic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And, Vic is that scarcity effect personified. And I mean, that's what he was doing. He was hoarding everything for when Australia got back to normal. But, Australia's probably not going to get back to normal.
No.
And so this is kind of like almost the way that our culture is now. And I think this might have happened. And this is something that I'm going to say way out of base because this is, opinion and not actually backed up by fact. But like, when during the 70s, when you went through the oil crisis, when like the gas crisis, that all of a sudden that we started to just start gobbling up oil, and now we've got into this scarcity effect of oil and gas, and what we're doing with the fracking and all this other stuff, which was a very minor theme for this movie as well. I think this plays into like also in the interpersonal interactions with the characters throughout the movie. Yeah,
and I wanted to point out like the fact that when Andy and Vic meet that final time with that final scene, and Andy just blatantly says, "She wasn't yours."
Yeah.
Like, no, you took her.
Yeah.
Like, you essentially kidnapped her.
Yeah.
Like, no, like she was not yours. And how that just, that's a lot of toxic masculinity right there. I mean, a lot of, thank goodness I'm not married to one of them, but a lot of men feel like their partner is theirs. And like, I have her now and she is mine forever and she belongs to me. And that kind of mentality is very bad because you have to remember that she is not a thing. She is a person. And she, has the same basic needs as you, and you gotta treat her like you would, like any average person that would come along the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's just not your thing. Anyway, I feel like we kind of got off a little off track there, but I guess what I'm trying to say is don't be focused on yourself all the time. Try to be focused more on the community around you, and you'll be surprised about what happens.
So these are the parables that we found, or the principles that we found in the parable of cargo. Is of course what fathers really should look like, and what masculinity should look like is being in touch with your feelings and your emotions. And we also talked about getting back to our roots as human beings and living in community. So in closing, these are the things that we are working on currently. I did obviously listen to a lot of podcasts this last week.
No way.
I did even catch up on my favorite podcasts, which are indie podcasts. Which mean by indie I mean we're indie, but is like independent apart from like massive conglomerates like NPR. Yeah. But my favorite ones are Ghost in the Burbs by Liz Sauer. She has fantastic vocalizations. Like, I don't know if she trained as an actor or anything, but she does fantastic. She has a great thing there.
And she does ghost stories, right?
Yeah, it's Ghost Stories. And Ghost Stories from Wellesley, Massachusetts. So go check that out. They're fantastic. Like, they're terrifying. And I'm not sure if she's actually, like, true, 100% real with all the stuff or not, but it makes it seem like it is. So,
oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's really good. And another one is I'm blanking on the name. But it's right here on Spreaker. Anyway,
let's distract them while you look it up.
Yeah, I am. What are you listening to right now while I look it up?
Sure. So, I think last time I talked about In the Dark with their new series that they're coming out with, but also another true crime podcast that is somewhat independent. I don't think they're a part of any big group either, but they do a really good job. Like, they have a lot of good listeners. They do a lot of like podcast conventions, which I wish one day we will go to one.
Yeah.
But they are the Generation Y podcast. They are kind of a mix between true crime podcast, but then they also have some other types of just like mysteries in general. Like, I think they have some stuff on like aliens on there and Bigfoot and all that jazz. But it's primarily true crime. So if you are into true crime and want to hear about stuff that you typically don't hear about, I definitely would give them a listen, because they actually explore a lot of like local murders that happen in small towns, which don't get covered a lot. So
the one that I was looking for is called Shelf Addiction. Tamara's on Spreaker as well. She's fantastic. She reviews audiobooks. And she reviews pop culture as well. So if you don't get enough of pop culture with us, go check her out. She does a fantastic job with that. And I just like the fact that she reviews audiobooks too, because I'm a large consumer of audiobooks. And speaking of which, I just started another one called Critical Failures, where a couple of friends get sucked into their D&D game. Like, literally, because they used the wrong dice and they picked the wrong dungeon master. So, so far it's rather humorous. I'm enjoying it. Anyway, that's what we're working on right now. Of course, we're still working on Westworld and Handmaid's Tale. The Magicians, we're still working on that as well.
Yep.
Come find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on our website, thehonestfaith.com. You can also give us a call at 720-372-3879. Again, that is 720-372-3879. Find us on our website, thehonestfaith.com. And with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.